Hey guys, welcome back to yet another episode of the Music Den. I'm, of course, your host, Armando Venditti. Hoping you guys are having a good day. And again, that you're looking after yourselves and one another. I would like to welcome Mr. Jim Bricker back to the channel. How are you
Thank
doing,
you.
Jim?
Doing well. Happy to sit in once again and talk music stuff.
Oh, we're going to be talking, all right. Ladies and gentlemen, the title of this episode Is This Still Pink Floyd? Now, I know that title is going to piss off a lot of people as well as the topic, but you know what? Here we go. Now, the reason for this episode is because due to the fact that David Gilmour is coming out with a new album on September 9th, 6th or 9th, called um, Luck and Strange, I thought it would be interesting to go through the post Roger Waters Pink Floyd releases and discuss um, to a deeper extent. Are these truly still Pink Floyd releases, even though Roger Waters is no longer affiliated with the band in terms of their recordings? And I decided to ask Jim to come along to see if he wanted to give his insight. I already know Bill Schuster's insight. How's it going, Bill? We miss you. Anyways, and again, I do understand that the title of the show is going to cause a lot of debate. So we're about to dive in here. Now, Pink Floyd, massively successful art rock, some would say progressive rock, hard rock band, started in mid 1960s under the name originally was the Pink Floyd. Then it was Pink Floyd. Original frontman Sid Barrett started with the band. They released their debut release, Piper the Gates of Dawn, on Harvest Records in 1967. Due to um, how can I put this diplomatically? Massive uses of LSD. Sid Barrett suffered a break from reality, a psychotic break, ended up having to leave the band after the release and tour for Piper the Gates of Dawn. He does appear on, I do believe, one or two tracks on Saucer Full of Secrets.
Mhm.
Uh, After his psychotic break, the rest of the band members decided to carry on with David Gilmour on guitar. David Gilmour being a friend of Sid Barrett. The original idea was to have Sid still in the band as a um, writing member of the band, who because for the first album he contributed most of the compositions, if not all the compositions, for the first album. The idea was to keep Sid at home and tour with David Gilmour. That was not to be due to Sid's, uh, how can I put this,
Mental
unpredictable
state?
mental state. Yes, good choice of words. So the band carried on with David Gilmour as a four-piece. Now, they released um, seven albums prior to the release of the seminal Dark Side of the Moon, being released on March 1st, 1973, again through Harvest Records. A massive success for the band. Massive success for the band. However, as of 1975, the cracks started to show, most notably on the recordings for Wish You Were Here. Roy Harper, who performs lead vocals on the song Have a Cigar, noted that he was in the studio and he recorded the lead vocals for the track Have a Cigar. He noted that he started to see there were tensions within the band. They carried on for two more albums, Animals in 1977 and the massively successful The Wall, my favorite album from the band, in 1979. At that point, tensions within the band were at an all-time high. Richard Wright was unceremoniously, sorry, forced out of the band by Roger Waters. Although he did perform with the band on the tour for The Wall as a session musician, thereby getting more money than members of the band did because they lost their shirts. They carried on for one more album, which was The Final Cut, released in 1983. After that point, Roger Waters went on record as saying that Pink Floyd was a spent force. And he notified both Columbia and Harvest in the UK, Columbia in the US, Harvest in the UK, that he would no longer be a part of the band. And he basically went on to say that Pink Floyd was no more. David Gilmour said, hold up a minute. We want to continue. If you want to leave, that's fine. We want to continue, you know, as Pink Floyd. We have something more to say. Roger Waters said, you're not doing it. You don't have the fucking guts to do it. And that's a quote.
Sounds like Roger.
Okay. Legal battles ensued, uh, and Roger Waters relented in the end. Pink Floyd went on to release two more albums, Momentary Lapse of Reason in September of I was going to say 77, 87, and The Division Bell in April of 94, before David Gilmour finally decided to disband the group and dissolve everything. In November of 2014, there was one final release done, The Endless River, which consisted of four parts, mostly instrumental, rock, ambient pieces of music that were recorded during the sessions for the Division Bell. Okay, so the purpose of this program is to discuss whether or not is this still Pink Floyd without Roger Waters. Does one band member have the right to say to a band, without me, you're no longer a band? You cannot call yourself Pink Floyd because I'm no longer in the band. Does one band member have that right? So that is what we're here to discuss.
Shall
So
we start there
shall we
with,
start? We
okay.
shall start from there. Yes.
Do
So
you want me to leap in, or do you want the
go
first
for it.
serve?
Go for it.
Okay. So, so there's two questions that kind of immediately come to mind. The one that you just expressed, which is, does one band member have kind of the claim over the whole rights and identity of the band? And the second question that I had is trying to define, well, if someone says you're not Pink Floyd, then you need to kind of define what Pink Floyd is. So I'll take the stab at the first question now, and I'll try to be, super brief. I think it depends on whom you're talking about. Um, just in terms of, does one band member constitute the entirety of the identity of the band? If you
Mhm.
have a band member who basically formed the band and, was the songwriter, may not have been the principal lead performer or the main singer, but if there was a guy who was kind of truly the heart and soul of the band, then I think you can make an argument that that person, is the band. Of course, having said that, as I'm just thinking in real time here, I'm struggling to come up with an example of where that is the case, but I think it's possible, where that could be. Unfortunately, everything I'm thinking of has two band members who are involved, so they're not really, germane examples. I think of Walter Becker and Donald Fagen,
Mhm.
and I'm
Mhm.
thinking like Andy Sturmer and Roger Manning with Jellyfish. Um,
I can
so
also give you another example, but go ahead. Hall and Oates.
okay. Oh yeah, sure, right. Um, so then that takes me to the second question: what is Pink Floyd? And so that sent me back through their catalog, primarily via the early years series of releases. So I, didn't listen to Ummagumma, I didn't listen to More, I didn't listen to Saucer Full of Secrets. I listened to the corresponding the early years albums. And, basically I found a band that had a pretty consistent, transition. I think it
Mhm.
wasn't until 1965. I mean, they were doing everything from like Bo Diddley based rock to blues, kind of combinations of mod and psychedelic tunes on like Walk With Me Sydney. You had tunes that were just way more psychedelic, like jug band blues. But even in that, like in the track in the Beach Woods, that's where you have hints of like classic Pink Floyd starting to emerge. And then, things just get more and more psychedelic and also more and more dreamy, where you kind of start to settle into what that Pink Floyd sound is. And then once you get into 69 and you've got Careful with That Axe, Eugene, Saucer Full of Secrets, I think the Floyd sound really starts to emerge and identify there. But then, by the time you get to Dark Side of the Moon, it changes again because you still have
Modulates,
these,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you still have these, psychedelic spacey elements, but you get more concrete song structures in there with themes that people could really identify with. And so you've got this continuing evolution through the band, and it continued to evolve as Roger sort of became more of a dominant force through certainly Animals and The Wall, and of course the Final Cut, which you can almost call that a Roger Waters solo album, the way some people call Momentary Lapse, like a David Gilmour solo album.
Yeah, yeah, we'll get into that too. Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
So those are kind of the two principal questions that I looked at first. But I've done a lot of blabbing, so tell me about your thought process behind this stuff, Armando.
My as well, my thought process is I know I just thought about it as you were talking. Um, I mean, Pink Floyd again started, as a psychedelic band, with Sid Barrett being the driving force, right? Main
Hmm.
songwriter. Um, the band was recording and releasing albums from 67 to 73, at a fast pace,
Yeah.
sometimes recording enough for two albums per year, and also depending on the record deal with EMI. Then you have again what's the seminal album, the classic Dark Side of the Moon, right?
Mhm.
Then that's when I noticed because there have been interviews with Roger Waters as far back as 75, late
Mhm.
73, early 74, even into 75, starting to say that we will never be that band of brothers again,
Hmm.
right? Now, he was saying this as far back as 74, as I said. That was when Dark Side of the Moon was a massive hit. Okay. Now, I'm wondering if he would have said the same thing had Dark Side of the Moon been mediocre to, like a smaller, you know, how can I put this? If Dark Side of the Moon had achieved smaller success on a smaller scale,
Right.
had it not blown up, would he have been going off saying, oh well, I viscerally knew that from from the outset, from the recording sessions of Dark Side of the Moon, that we were never going to be that band of brothers again. That brotherhood was dead. You know, um, do you know what I mean? I don't believe so. I think that he took the what was to be the massive success of said album, Dark Side of the Moon. I
Mhm.
think it went to his head. I think
It probably did, even though if you look at Dark Side, I'm looking at the credits really here while we were talking.
yes.
He is the sole writer of only three tunes. So Money, Brain Damage, and Eclipse.
Okay.
He's the lead vocalist on only two tunes, and that's Brain Damage and Eclipse. My and then like you were saying, it was a massive success. I mean, for two, for years it ruled the charts. And my guess is that a lot of the success that came from that really affected probably all the band members and the relationships, because it's like you've gone from this, weird boutique psychedelic jam band into the number one album on every chart that exists.
You're in the stratosphere, right? I
Yeah.
mean,
And that sort of sudden change and the stress and the money and the demands and all that stuff, it's gonna mess with any dynamic.
and then and then you fast forward to 2023 with the re-release and the re-recording of Dark Side of the Moon. Okay. Now, um, prior to the release of the reissue of the re-recording, Roger Waters went on record as saying, okay, let's get this straight. The idea, the concept, the lyrics for Dark Side of the Moon was me. Everything was me. Yes, Dave provided guitar, Rick provided piano and keyboards, and Nick did his business with drumming and effects. But that is my album. That was my concept. That is my album. They just played along. God complex, anybody? I mean, really. Um, that pissed off a lot of people. Then
Mm.
he tries to take back, I guess, talk back the words, like take back what he said and dial it back a bit and said, and no, they all contributed equally. You know, Rick Wright did some fantastic contributions, fantastic playing. The Great Gig in the Sky is a masterpiece. Too little,
Highlight of the album.
too late, right?
Yeah,
In my
right. Damage is done.
Exactly. You've gone on record as saying that your band members, your bandmates, sorry, that were a part of the band equally up until 1973, after that point were just basically, you know, supporting players in the
Sidemen,
cast
yeah.
of a play that was just you. You know something? It doesn't work like that.
Hmm.
It doesn't work like that. Um, I'm not discounting the genius of what is Roger Waters in terms of his musical contributions and his arrangements and his ability to conjure up themes and spark uh, debate
Hmm.
and get your attention. The Wall to me is a masterpiece. Okay, I will go on record as saying it is my favorite Pink Floyd album, bar none. Okay, I will go to my grave saying that. Okay,
Hmm.
but Pink Floyd was a collaborative effort by all four members of the band. Okay. Because a person chooses to leave and considers that band a spent force, quote unquote, does, again, that beckons the question. And guys watching, please put your comments down there, down below. Does it beckons the question? Does one band member have the right to control, you know, the destiny of that band if they choose to leave?
Right.
I mean, when he left, he contacted Columbia in the US and Harvest in the UK and said, I am no longer part of the band. He fired his Steve O'Rourke, he fired his manager, got new management. He went so far as to, when he found out that the band were going to record a new album under the name Pink Floyd, went so far as to contact the venues saying, you are not allowed to use any banners, any advertisement with the name Pink Floyd. If you do, I'll sue you. Okay.
Yep.
I
Yep.
I don't understand. I don't understand that mentality, that way of thinking. Now,
Right.
um, they countersued. They said Gilmore and Mason, Richard Wright, as of 86, 87, was still a hired player. He was not a full-fledged member of the band again.
Hmm.
Um, because he has said in interviews, I was pushed out of the band. I was not doing well in my marriage. I had other issues going on. I
Right.
was not able to contribute. Roger took charge of that, saw my weakness, and kicked me out of the band. Okay.
Yep.
The minute Gilmore took over leadership of the band, he reinstated Rick Wright and wanted to do a proper Pink Floyd album. Out comes on September 7th of 87, A Momentary Lapse of Reason. Okay. Now, that album hit, I believe it hit number one
I think so.
in the US. Again,
It's very
produced,
successful. A lot of pent up demand for Pink
yes,
Floyd at that point.
I had that on vinyl when it first came out. Okay. And as a 17-year-old, I couldn't get into it.
Hmm.
I have since, you know, gained a, gained more respect for it. Produced by
Right.
Bob Ezrin and David Gilmour. Now, Gilmour went as so far as to say to Bob Ezrin, if you're working with Floyd with this version of my band that I'm no longer a part of, then I don't want to work with you anymore. That is how far this guy went in terms of his
Hmm.
God complex. So, I mean, I don't know. My question to you is listening to these albums, the three albums without Roger Waters, is this to you still Pink Floyd?
And my answer to that question is yes. So let me qualify that
Okay.
on why I answer that way. Um, so again, looking at the sort of progression of Pink Floyd over time,
Hmm. Hmm.
looking at the contributions of all the different members, like the writing credits and things that were going on, pre Dark Side of the Moon, including Dark Side of the Moon. It's definitely, you see a band that is pretty much continually evolving until they kind of settle into this kind of space rock psychedelic groove, with, around Adam Hart Mother, metal, things like that. And then they take another sharp turn, like we said, with Dark Side of the Moon, and things become more song based. Interestingly, they kind of regress in a manner with Wish You Were Here,
Hmm.
which is very much more like some of the old spacey psychedelic records in
Yeah.
terms of their form, but it's updated for a modern sound on what was going on in 1974, 1975.
Yeah.
And then, the songs in there are really strong. Plus, they had the thematic structure that they built by taking Shine On You Crazy Diamond and
Mm.
creating, bookends of it
Yeah.
instead of having it be one song. So they created this cohesive whole, where you didn't have one with like Atom Heart Mother and Metal so much.
Yes.
They were still
Yes.
like collections of songs.
Hmm.
You go to Animals, again, you've got the thematic bookends of Pigs on the Wing, but it's basically, you know, a Roger a Roger Waters solo album, except for the co-writing on Dogs and some amazing playing on that too. The
Hmm.
Wall, again, Roger was the guy behind the wheel driving that whole thing. Great that he had the vision and the passion behind it. Super. Final Cut, that's sort of like, well, what do we do now, guys? Well, what did we reject when we were going to do The Wall? Well, we rejected a bunch of songs and we rejected Pros and Cons of Hitchhiking. So, let's stay on the Wall front and kind of keep exploring those themes from World War II and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and it's got to be noted too that when the idea to do the final cut came about to continue, at this point, Rick Wright is gone. Michael
Yep.
Kamen comes in uh, for keyboards and orchestrations, etc.
Yeah.
Fantastic arranger, you know. And there's a quick story where Michael Kamen said he was in the studio, he was writing something down on a notepad, and Roger Waters comes in the control room and he says, "What are you doing? What are you
Hmm.
writing? What are you doing?" Like, Michael Kamen looks at him, shows him, and says, "I'm just writing out my parts for what I'm about to record. Like, what do you want me to do?" Like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, carry on. It's like, wait a minute, you know.
Roger was the original Steve Jobs.
And it also is, um, it also, should be noted that Gilmore did not want to record the final cut, those
Okay.
tracks for the final cut, because he
Yeah.
said to Waters, "Well, if those songs weren't good for the wall, what makes them good now?"
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
And Roger Waters, I mean, again, this man is a walking drama. He's a walking soap opera. I mean, the wall came about, and it should be noted too. The origins of the wall came about when Pink Floyd were performing at the Stadium Olympique in Montreal on the Animals tour. They were performing the album, and the fans were getting into it. Waters was getting pissed off because they were like cheering and stuff. And he wanted them to sit there and listen to the music. This fan tried to get his way close to the stage. Roger Waters walks over to the fan and spits in his face. And 2 days later, he starts writing demos for the wall. So
Yeah. This
bit
barrier that he wants to put between him and reality.
bit by bit,
Yes.
bit by
Brick
bit,
by brick. Yeah.
this man's self-imposed isolation is taking place. Not only
Right.
that, he's dragging everybody in line with him. I think this way, so you must think this way as well,
Right.
you know? And the more Gilmore and Mason, refuted that, or like didn't want to go that down that road, he felt that his dominance over the band should be absolute, and that's it, right?
Hmm.
Like what I say goes. I mean, I'm surprised he lasted in the band that long because I'm very surprised that the other three members didn't say to him, "Get a grip on yourself, grab whatever part of yourself you have to in order to understand that you are still a human being and that you're acting like a prick."
Yeah.
You know
Yeah.
what I
And
mean?
that, yeah, and just because you're acting in an authoritarian manner doesn't mean that you have kind of sole proprietary license over the identity of Pink Floyd. You know, if they hadn't have been as successful, then it probably wouldn't have been as huge of an issue like you were talking about. But because the music and the band and the identity evolved over time and Roger sort of became a dominant force, it doesn't mean that that was Roger's band. It was, everyone else's band as much as Roger's. It's just that he was on a very dominant creative high and really had these visions for places to go, and it worked out very, very well. Certainly you could say that for Animals and you could say that for The Wall. It's kind of questionable on who really drove Wish You Were Here, and then people would say, well, Final Cut really wasn't classic Pink Floyd, so you can't call it that. But anyway, just because of those things and the fact that this was sort of a peak, charting the progress of Pink Floyd. If you get up to here around, like The Wall, it's a peak on a journey. It hasn't been this straight line all along that one could always say
Yeah.
Roger Waters was the complete dominant force around Pink Floyd. And so therefore, that's why I feel in this case that Pink Floyd should not have been dominated by one person, be it Roger Waters, be it David Gilmour, whomever. It was a
Mhm.
collective experience where you had one person kind of poking up and excelling more than others, but because of the whole history of things, and I don't think he had a real claim to it, and probably the lawyers identified that as well, and that's probably why they settled.
Well,
But
yeah,
it's purely conjecture on my part.
yes. According to the information I have, when Roger Waters launched his lawsuit to stop for them, to stop the use of the name Pink Floyd, he was told that by his lawyers he was going to be sued by CBS, Columbia in the U.S., and Harvest for for not delivering product
Okay.
because Pink Floyd was basically still active as a band. So if he continued this lawsuit, he was going to be bankrupt,
Yep.
right? So he decided to stop the lawsuit, and he met up with David Gilmour. He and Nick Mason met up with Roger Waters on his boat, the Astoria. They
Hmm.
signed a deal saying, "We're still going to be Pink Floyd. You'll get your royalties from the release of the albums prior, but from now on, you back off."
Yeah,
Basically,
and if you want all the puppets and the stuff from the wall, fine, but we
fine.
want everything else. Yeah.
Take the pig, take the inflatable pig, take the inflatable teacher from from the wall uh, concert set, and just leave us alone,
Yeah, right.
right? And then come 2005, you have, I think it was the Live 8 concert where they wanted um, Pink Floyd to appear again, and Roger Waters all of a sudden had to change of heart. Oh, I made a mistake. Like we were a band. We were a band. We were a collective. We were brothers, and we still are on some level. And I'm like,
Hmm.
and David Gilmour's like, "Are you high? Like, what do you like? You're smoking something. Like
Yeah,
something's
there's
wrong
there's
here."
been a great deal of inconsistency on how Waters has approached things because I was thinking about that as well. Like performances of The Wall when Roger Waters was solo and he toured the world umpteen times performing The Wall.
And
There
they've
were there were performances, I think one was in London, where during Comfortably Numb, who is at the top of the wall singing and playing the guitar? David Gilmour.
Mhm.
So obviously there are these periods where some semblance of sort of common sense and brotherhood and mending fences happens.
Yes, I do believe that there have been moments of lucidity where Waters and Gilmore have come to an agreement. Okay, I'll come do this for you. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
But when it came to the Live 8 performance, Gilmore was against it. He
Okay.
relented. He relented when they did the rehearsals. Forgive the rant, guys, but this whole show is another tangent. When they did the rehearsals, uh, Waters showed up and wanted to make it, a political statement and do this, and Gilmore said, "Listen, we are not doing that. Okay, we are on stage for 25 minutes. We're going to play what we know. We're going to play what they want to hear. We'll do a good performance, but that's it. I'm
That's
not
it.
getting on a soapbox and, you know, talking about the war and the Falklands and all that. No, 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 no. We are not doing that." So Waters acquiesced because, according to him, he was just happy that they were playing. I mean, even when you see them taking the bow, Gilmore is standing
It
at the
looked genuine.
at after, but at first, Gilmore is standing at the far left of the stage, and
Okay.
Roger is like, come on, just come on, let's do a hug." Like we'll just bow. He
Hug it
didn't
out. Yeah.
want he didn't want to be near him at all
Okay.
because he didn't want to be pulled into the whole cycle again of the drama,
Right.
right? Now again, as far back as you know 2022, Waters is saying on Facebook, "David Gilmour has blocked me from posting anything on the Pink Floyd website." You know, now he's being bitter, and his wife is nothing but, now he's going back to the old, you know, his old ways of, you know,
Yeah.
of being vitriol and just acidic and all this kind of like who is the who is the real Roger Waters? Do you
Hmm.
know what I mean? That should
Yeah.
be another topic. Who is the actual Roger Waters? Okay.
Yep.
Is he an individual that wanted to be in a band and be in a collective and create music? Or is he an individual that wanted to dominate and just, you know, spout off his, you know, thoughts on the war and in politics and dominate over about like who is this individual?
Right.
He is a walking contradiction,
Hmm.
you know. And I mean, from what I gather, from September of '87 to April of '94, all Gilmore, Wright, and Mason wanted to do was to record and tour. Right? They wanted to record albums. They wanted to tour the world. They wanted, like just to get back to what they were doing prior to all the drama. Now,
Yeah.
having said that, the original release of A Momentary Lapse of Reason, as you stated quite rightly so, at the start, has been considered a de facto David Gilmour solo album due to the fact that the original releases consisted of David Gilmour and Bob Ezrin and a list of session musicians.
Right.
And
Great session musicians like
great session
Tony Levin,
musicians,
you know.
right? But session musicians nonetheless, with
Sure.
Nick Mason's contributions being very minimal and Richard Wright's contributions being, minimal at best.
Yeah, right.
Gilmour has gone on record as saying that the reason why Nick Mason and Richard Wright were not on Momentary Lapse of Reason is because Roger Waters did a number on them. He wiped out their their how can I put it? He wiped out their self-value completely.
Interesting. Okay.
Okay. And Mason took issue with that. He said, I don't believe that Roger, stripped me of my confidence completely. I do believe that Gilmour wanted a momentary lapse of reason to be just right. So I acquiesced and allowed him to use drum machines and sequencers on the album.
Hmm.
Okay. But coming full circle again to 2019, Momentary Lapse of Reason has been re recorded with live drums put in and Richard Wright's contributions being added in to a fuller extent.
Right.
Right. So, I mean, take from this tangent what you will. I mean, again, does one band member have the right to dominate over a band so much to the point that without him they no longer exist? I mean,
Right. And the thing is that, momentary lapse of reason, it does not feel like the wall, animals, wish you were here, work your way backwards, simply because Roger is not there. So it doesn't feel that way. So you're not going to get that sort of acerbicness and acidity, that Roger brought to the lyrics and the themes and that kind of thing.
mhm,
Um, Musically, there are certainly elements of momentary lapse of reason that kind of harken back to, like Dark Side of the Moon here and there, but it certainly doesn't meet those heights. I was talking with you before we came on camera that, frankly, the way that they put together um, the running order on momentary lapse of reason always kind of left me cold. Like side two was like way too heavily weighted on, the extra moody pieces and the instrumentals, and it just became kind of a slog to get through. You
yeah,
know, I took the liberty, because I'm full of myself, to kind of say, well, what if I mixed the album? What would be a better running order? So I kind of came up with a better running order to me,
yep,
and to me, it creates a more balanced look at the album. But there when it came out, people were hungry for Pink Floyd. I mean, their impact had not ceased. Their legend grew larger in the absence of them putting out albums. And so by the time that they were touring and they hit the San Francisco Bay Area in like the fall of '87, they they're playing a night at the Oakland Coliseum. Okay, let's add a second night. Okay, let's add a third. And it's like a bunch of my housemates were like, "Oh, we're going to see Pink Floyd. Do you want to go?" And I'm like, nah, because it just doesn't feel like Pink Floyd to me. It was going to be, I'm sure it was going to be good, and I'm sure it was going to be impressive with the lights and all the different things and the effects, but it just didn't feel like Floyd. I did go see Roger Waters on the uh, Pros and Cons of Hitchhiking tour, where the first set was all Pink Floyd material, and the second half was, that album. And again, it was all right, but it didn't feel like Pink Floyd. And it's just kind of like, well, I just don't want to be disappointed. I don't want to be set up for that. So I still kind of bought that it was Pink Floyd, but like we talked about with Genesis, um, that's not the Pink Floyd that I'm there for.
Okay.
So to me, you take whatever, um, the dark side of the moon is to a momentary lapse of reason as a trick of the tail is to invisible touch.
Ooh,
Same band. And
ooh.
I'm not saying that in terms of like quality, because to me, Momentary Lapse of Reason is a much better album than Invisible Touch. The point I'm trying to make is
You're talking
that
about points of reference. Okay. Yeah.
yeah, it's kind of the line along the continuum and just the analogy between the two. It was still Genesis, but they had changed into a completely different band from 1976 to 1986.
Yeah.
Similarly, Floyd changed dramatically from 73, all the way through to 87. And just like in 1986, that wasn't the Genesis that I wanted. Similarly, Momentary Lapse of Reason, Pink Floyd wasn't the Pink Floyd that I wanted. Still
Okay.
didn't take away from the fact that they were Pink Floyd. It's just not what I wanted to kind of lay my money down for, which is my choice as a consumer. Dagnabbit.
Of course. No, I mean everyone has a choice. No. Um, just to go off on the Genesis tangent for a second. I I have been thinking about doing an episode, on called with the title uh The Wrong Direction. Like, like have certain bands, you know, made a left or made the wrong turn, irreparably so. Like, can they, so far to the left that they can't come back. And Genesis is one of them. I mean, with Invisible Touch. But no, I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying. I do believe that there are bands where that people want to remember them at a certain time frame, from a
Mhm.
certain time frame, and they don't want to go past, say, the Dark Side of the Moon or the Wall period. They want
Yeah.
to always remember Pink Floyd as, you know, either from the Dark Side of the Moon time period or the Wall. But as a band wanting to continue, how do you do that? Maintaining what you feel as having still the musical integrity, and keeping everything intact and still going on under the moniker of Pink Floyd. All you can do is just go forward. I mean,
Mhm.
like, for example, is A Momentary Lapse of Reason is it from the same band that created um Dark Side of the Moon? No. And I don't think it was supposed to be.
Right.
I don't think it was supposed to be. I'm sure that people walked up to them and said, "Oh, it's a good album, but it's not Dark Side of the Moon. Why aren't you doing music like that anymore?" Well, then go back and listen to Dark Side of the Moon.
Yeah, because people change, and that was like 14 years ago, bro. So, you know,
Like, just like people change their underwear, they change musical styles too. It's like it's that easy. It's that
yeah.
simple. Um, and you can make that argument for any number of bands. I mean, when Prince did Around the World in a Day, a year after Purple Rain came up, the people were saying, "Well, it's not Purple Rain." Well, it's not supposed to be Purple Rain.
Right.
It's a new album. It's a new avenue to go down. I mean, and getting back to Momentary Lapse of Reason, David Gilmour has said, compared to um, the Division Bell, A Momentary Lapse of Reason is indeed a darker album
Hmm.
because they were under a cloud of the Roger Waters mystique. Can they continue
Sure.
without such a dominant band member, like a dominant force within the band? They've
Hmm.
proven that they can do so. Is it the same band? No, and it's not supposed to be.
Right. Again, very similar to go to pull out Genesis and use them as an analogy.
Yeah,
Very similar that, Trick of the Tail was kind of a proving point to see can Genesis even be Genesis without Peter Gabriel? Well, the answer is yes. It's just different. And for some people, it was, you know, a nice step. To some people, it was way better. And for some people, it was just like, forget it. Gabriel's not there. I don't want to be involved. I think those voices are very, very few, but yeah, I get
yeah.
you.
No, I
But
understand that.
let me ask you this then. So,
Go
um,
on.
you asked me the question about, can this still be Pink Floyd without, Roger Waters? And you answer the question, good sir. I'm pointing back to you. What do you say?
Can it be Pink Floyd without Roger Waters? Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, it can be. It,
Yep.
it is.
Okay.
It is.
I totally agree.
I do believe that under Roger Waters' pseudo leadership, I do believe that the band members as a collective were being strangled under the
Hmm.
weight of what was Roger Waters' domination, and something had to give.
Right.
You know, the fact that he literally said to them, "Well, I'm out of here. I'm gone." Like you're a spent force. Excuse me, you and the horse you came in on. I'm sorry, but you're a spent force. We still want to continue. We
Right.
have the legal right. We have the means to do so, and we're going to
Hmm.
do so. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, let's take a look at it. For example, in the case of animals, dogs, 17 minutes plus takes up most, if not 95% of side one,
Yep.
right? David Gilmour says, "Look, my writing is on 95% of side one. I think I'm an equal contributor to this band, even at that
Hmm.
point." So I think Gilmour had just as much to say as Waters did at that point. And I think he did say it, you know?
Hmm.
So I think he had every right to continue the band as Pink Floyd,
Sure.
I mean, and it's not, and again, it's not that he didn't have, as I rub my eyes, forgive me, um, ulterior motives as well. I mean, let's look at the situation. Gilmore had just completed the About Face tour, which to him
Yep.
was a disaster.
Hmm.
It did not make any money. So he was hoping to be able to continue writing under the moniker Pink Floyd. In comes
Hmm.
Waters saying, "Oh, you can't do that because it's my band. I am Pink Floyd." No, you are not Pink Floyd. You're a
Right.
part of it. You
But
know,
you're not it.
you're not
Yeah.
it. Because the
Exactly.
same, and if we're going to harken back to the Piper at the Gates of Dawn, people could say, "Oh, okay, Sid Barrett left the band or was unceremoniously dumped from the band," because apparently, according to rumors, they just didn't pick him up for rehearsal one day,
Okay.
left him standing on the street corner and didn't go get him. So the fact that he was unceremoniously dumped by the band members, the argument could be made. He wrote most of the music for the first album. Without him, there's no Pink Floyd. Why did you continue?
Right. So it's interesting you bring that up. So an argument could be made that Sid was Pink Floyd, but of course he he checked out. Let's just put it that way.
Yes. Yes. Very
Uh,
diplomatic way to put it. Yes.
Thank you. I'm a lover, not a fighter.
You are
So
nothing but diplomatic. If I'm telling you,
hey.
there you go. There you go.
So and of course you could make the argument, that Roger Waters was Pink Floyd, but yet the way he went about it was very, very aggressive and very undiplomatic. Now, you could also make the same state that from 87 on, David Gilmour was Pink Floyd, except for the fact that Mason and to a degree Wright were involved, you know, pretty much all along the way.
Yes.
You know, David Gilmour never had the, at least that I'm aware of, the um, pronouncements of ego of which to say, I am this. He always talked about it as the band and as, the collective and whatnot. So just by virtue of the fact that, you know, he didn't he didn't demonstrate it and he also didn't state it, makes it seem like that's just kind of a null argument. There's not really much there to that
Yeah.
supposition that someone just saying, oh, that David Gilmour is Pink Floyd. Kind of by default, he became the vocal identity of Pink Floyd as well as the primary musical identity just because of his very distinctive guitar work.
Yeah. He became the de facto leader of Pink Floyd due to, yeah. No,
Yeah.
that goes without saying. I don't believe that he has taken on the stance of, I am the leader of this band. What
Right.
I say goes. Um, no, and I mean, he did say when he put the band to bed, when he disbanded Pink Floyd, he did say in an interview that it is him at this point that writes the majority of the music. So it's a lot of work for him to get everything going and up and running. And
Hmm.
you know, he doesn't discount the contributions of Rick Wright or Nick Mason at all, to the point where,
Right.
again, when they reissued A Momentary Lapse of Reason in 2019, Nick Mason went in and re-recorded all the drum parts live, and they
Hmm.
reinstated more of Rick Wright's keyboard parts for the album to give it more of a balanced approach.
Hmm.
Um, I I just feel that for Pink Floyd at this point, after the passing of Rick Wright in 2008, that I'm not saying that they're a spent force. I'm saying that Pink Floyd has come to its logical conclusion, you know.
Right. And it's interesting, you say that it's come to its logical conclusion, but you still have like Nick Mason is out there kind of carrying on the torch with the
A
what
saucer
is it,
full of
Nick Mason's
secrets.
Saucer Full of Secrets, where
Hmm.
they're focused on music from metal and before. That's
Yes.
that's all they're playing live, and
Hmm.
that's great, keeping that music alive and probably exposing it to a whole new audience who thought mistakenly that Roger was Pink Floyd and that they didn't exist prior to Dark Side of the Moon.
Yes.
Um, and David Gilmour is going to go out on tour this year, and he's playing like what 8 shows around the world. And
Yes.
I believe he said, don't expect any don't expect anything from the classic period of Pink Floyd. So you're not going to hear "Wish You Were Here." You're not going to hear "Money." You're not going to hear "Echoes." You're not going to hear "Run Like Hell." It sounds like you can correct me on this, Armando, if you know it, but it sounds like stuff from like 87, is still a possibility to appear in the show, stuff from 87 and 94, but
Possible.
possible.
Possible. I mean, I, I mean, again, if that is the case, then he has every right to do so. I mean,
Yeah, absolutely.
I saw Pink Floyd July of '94 on the Division Bell tour at the C&E Grandstand in Toronto. And I gotta tell you, that was a major show.
That's
It
pretty impressive.
was just, my mind was blown. I mean,
Hmm.
it was really good. Again, is it the Pink Floyd of the Dark Side of the Moon period, or obscured by clouds? No, I don't think it's meant to be.
Sure. I mean, it's interesting that on that tour they played the entirety of Dark Side of the Moon in the
Yes, they
second
did.
set.
Yeah,
Um, so it kind of like reestablished that. Plus, it's a case of giving the people what they want. I mean, come on, who wouldn't just think that was the coolest thing ever if they were going to a Pink Floyd show to sit through
exactly.
that?
Exactly. And another just another side tangent. Um, another band that comes to mind is Queen. When Freddie Mercury was alive, they would talk to him about being the leader of Queen, and he's like, "Wait a minute, I'm not the leader of Queen. I'm the lead singer." But you have four individuals who all have a quarter say of what goes on in the band. And
Right.
I'm not, they were all contributing songwriters. They were all
Oh
arrangers,
yeah.
producers, vocalists, with the exception of John Deacon. Um, but this is a prime example of a band who you would think, with Freddie Mercury being such a dominant force in
Yeah.
terms of vocals and presence and stage persona, that whatever he said went. No, 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 no.
He was
He
one of four.
It was exactly, and he said this. So I mean, there are a lot of variables going on here in terms of, in terms of these bands. But getting back to the original premise of this episode,
Hmm.
again, guys out there, give us your comments because we thrive on this too. We'd love to hear your feedback. Does one band member have the right to call the shots and call and say when a band has reached its prime or is a spent force, quote unquote, and and it's time to walk away? Or should a band continue in one form or another if one band member does decide to leave?
So I have another suggestion that just came to mind of it's something that fits into that category.
Okay.
David Byrne and Talking Heads. Now, obviously Stop Making Sense was kind of the zenith of the Talking Heads. They still made, a few great albums after that, but after Naked, David kind of said, "Yeah, we're done." And again, I didn't do the proper research to discuss this topic at length. Maybe you know more about it than I do, but that seemed to be really contentious. You know, I think Jerry, Chris, and Tina wanted to carry on. They did an album called, I think it's No Talking All Head or something like that, which had different vocals coming in, and it
I
wasn't very
remember that.
successful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think there was some rancor going in, and they've since solved that and made peace with one another. But
Yeah, I think it's all in the way. I think it's all in the way how you handle it.
sure,
I mean, um, I'm sorry, the two members, Tina what's her name? Tina Weymouth?
Tina Weymouth, and then her husband, the drummer Chris Franz.
Chris Franz. Okay. All right. Um, I think that, you know, I'm sure that if David Byrne said to Tina and Chris, look, I can't, we're done. I'm not doing this anymore. And
Hmm.
I'm sure if he had said to them, you're not allowed to use the name Talking Heads anymore, that would have pissed them off because I'm sure they thought
Yeah,
of themselves as a contributing member, contributing factors to the band.
definitely musically. I mean,
And
all
Jerry
four were
Harrison as well,
involved.
right? Jerry
Yeah,
Harrison.
absolutely, absolutely.
Okay. See, I do know some Talking Heads, so it's but I'm again the the crux of this whole thing, and forgive my dogs for barking. I think Bob went out. Um, the crux of this whole thing is if a band member decides to leave, however important that they think they are in their own mind to the formation or the continuation of said band, if they choose to leave, should that band decide to go on and should that's fine, but should that band continue? I believe they should.
And I think it probably depends on the band, and it depends on their history, and it
Exactly.
depends on how strong the individuals are, you know, aside from one another.
You know,
There's all kinds of there's all
and
kinds of
yeah, there are a
variables.
lot of variables that go into the mix, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I just remembered a quote that Brian May said in an interview back in 1981. He said, the one thing that, and I'm paraphrasing, guys, okay? The one thing that keeps us going is the fact that Queen is better than any one of us separately.
Okay, so the whole is greater than the sum of the parts,
That's exactly it,
Yeah.
right? Um, but anyways, back to the catalog. Post Waters with Pink Floyd.
Yes.
You have a momentary lapse of reason. You have the division bell, and then you have the endless river. What are your thoughts on the latter two?
So Division Bell I like better than Momentary Lapse of Reason. And it's interesting that you call that Gilmore kind of called Momentary Lapse to be, a darker album because it had this weight of, Waters and all the, you know, legal drama and all that garbage going on. It still sure seems like Roger Waters' presence is floating around Division Bell because it sure seems like those song lyrics, whether they were from Polly Sampson or whether they were from David Gilmour, you can sure read a lot of the rancor in, Gilmore and Waters trying to discuss things and work things out, played out through those lyrics. Now, maybe I'm just reading into it,
No,
or
yeah,
maybe it's completely intentional. I don't know.
no, I know what you're saying. I think you're referring to, well, I'm thinking of the song Pulls Apart.
Well, pulls apart, what do you want from me? Even
What do
things
you want?
like, keep talking.
Yeah, yeah, with
Um,
Stephen Hawking on the sample. Yeah.
yeah,
I do agree with you. I do agree with you that um when Gilmore did an interview for the local news in Toronto when they performed in Toronto that to for the show that I went to, fantastic fucking show. I swear to God. Oh my God, it was amazing. But
love it.
he did say that the Division Bell was a more optimistic album in
Hmm.
terms of lyrical content and in terms of the songs were brighter. They were more they weren't as morose or as dark
Sure. Yeah.
as
I don't feel like I have to remix Division Bell.
no, no. And I mean I agree with you. I listened to it again last night, preparing for the show because I do my notes and stuff. I do find that the Division Bell is a better album overall
Hmm.
from a momentary lapse of reason. I
Right.
do. I have gained a new respect for a momentary lapse of reason, due to the songwriting contributions of Patrick Leonard, um, and other individuals. Patrick Leonard would work with Madonna prominently in the 80s. You know,
Toy Matinee. Don't forget Toy Matinee.
Toy Matinee. That's right. That's right. Bill Schuster mentioned Toy Matinee to me too. Um, I still have to get that CD, but I do. I know. What am I waiting for? Um,
Dude.
I'll tell you what I bought off camera. Um,
Okay.
Jellyfish is on the way, ladies and gentlemen. Um, both albums. Uh,
Yes.
but I do find that I do lean towards more of towards the Division Bell
Sure.
over Momentary Lapse of Reason, and the song in particular is High Hopes, the last track on the album.
Yeah, that's a
Uh,
great concluding track.
and it's a very emotional, very emotive, gut wrenching, because it to me it talks about an individual who is looking back on his life and realizes the division bell signifying the separation from innocence to maturity
Hmm.
and going through life. And when I listened to that track back in '94, I remembered times of me, when I was a kid, 8 years old, like during the summers, being out and about, and just doing things with friends and just remembering that time and knowing that that pocket of time is gone and they will never be recaptured or relived again. So
Hmm.
that's where I get from that track, and that's why
Sure.
it's a great song for me. Um,
Yeah.
I think that it has a good mix of the experimentation that Pink Floyd were doing with the ambient, keyboard stuff with Cluster One. Also, I
Hmm.
do love the acoustic uh, accompaniment that comes with Poles Apart.
Yes.
Uh, you
Agreed.
know, with the acoustic guitars, and then that middle section with the orchestrations uh that happen on that track. Um, and I'm having a brain fart on his name, but the lead singer for Dream Academy also contributed lyrics for that song, Paul.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Nick
Uh,
Claire Lowe's, is that it?
yeah, yeah. Um, I do,
Victory.
I
Right
do
on.
think that David Gilmour also commented that the Division Bell is a more lyrical album than A Momentary Lapse of Reason. I think that is a 100% true. I do believe
Sure.
that.
Yeah.
Um,
Now,
go on.
Endless River.
The Endless River, I like it.
Hmm.
Minus one track.
Okay.
And can you guess what that one track is?
I'm gonna guess it's the last one.
Louder Than Words.
Okay.
Um, no. All I can say is no. I'm sorry.
Okay. Wow.
Um, I really, David Gilmour should not use the words like dis and fight in lyrics. It doesn't work. I
Right.
mean, I'm sorry. The majority of the album is all instrumental. It segues into one another. The tracks all segue into one another. I do believe that it does flow very, very naturally, and there is a fluidity to it until you get to Louder Than Words, and it's just like
Yep.
you just whizzed on a Picasso. I'm sorry. I mean,
Or you've thrown, paint on Stonehenge to be a little bit more modern,
exactly,
topical.
exactly. I
I'm
just,
I'm I'm with you though. I hear I like the Endless River. I it to me, talking about the totality and the arc of the band, you take something like Cymbeline and you can draw some pretty direct, you know, parallels to, the Endless River. The same with, Careful with That Axe, Saucer Full of Secrets, Embryo, you know, they
mhm.
they all it all kind of works together. And
Yeah,
it seems it's not an outlier in the Pink Floyd catalog because it has the the genesis of those other albums with it. And even um what Household Objects, which was kind of the original working name of Wish You Were Here for a long time.
yeah, yeah,
um and so there's a correlation to there as well. I mean, the beginning of Wish You Were Here, or sorry, Shine On You Crazy Diamond, points to that. It fits without being derivative.
exactly. Exactly. And I must qualify what I just said about the Endless River. We did an album ranking almost a year ago on
Hmm.
Pink Floyd, and the Endless River was low on my list. It was low on my list. I- I've reassessed it. I've listened to it, and I do like it. I do think that I think that it's an album that you can put on, turn off the lights, and just sit back and then just enjoy what you're listening to. It
Yeah.
takes you on a trip. And then you get to Lost for Words, and it's like you're thrown off a cliff. I'm sorry. It's
Yeah.
just it's like dead stop, and it's like those Looney Tunes cartoons where the character looks down and he knows he's gonna fall. and he just waves to the camera and he just falls. That's
Yep.
what I feel about. There's a plug for our Looney Tunes episode. That's what I feel when I hear Lost for Words.
Yeah.
I don't get it. It's an anomaly on that album, and it just doesn't fit. I do like the album overall, but it's just that one track that just that's it. I'm done.
Yeah.
I can't.
Yeah.
I just can't. I just can't. Um, well, ladies and gentlemen, unless you have any more to add, we can conclude our.
I don't have any more to add. I guess I'm looking, to you, good sir, since, you kind of had the vision for this discussion. My question to you is, did we answer the burning question that you had sufficiently?
I think we did.
Okay.
I do believe that it is still Pink Floyd without Roger Waters. I do believe that no one member of a band or ex-member of a band have the right to control the destiny of, say, two or three other people because they decided themselves that the group of people that they've been working with for the past, say, 10, 15, 20 years is in fact a spent force. I think that the fact that he said that at that time was a gross, disgusting comment to make. I think that he insulted the intelligence and the integrity and the importance of the other three members of Pink Floyd. And I think that they are still Pink Floyd with or without Roger Waters. I think they've proven that they are, and they do not need his approval or anyone else's to call themselves Pink Floyd. I think that the merit and the content of their work after his departure speaks for itself,
Yep.
bar none. You know. Uh, anyway, that is the show, ladies and gentlemen. So,
Drop the mic.
yeah, really, mic drop. That's it. No, ladies
Boom.
and gentlemen, this has been a bone of contention for me for a while. I've seen other shows where people say, "Oh, without Roger Waters, it's not Pink Floyd. It's not Pink Floyd." I know Bill Schuster says it's not. He's a Roger Waters
I
loyalist.
got that sense from Bill. I got
Yes,
that
he
sense
is.
based on an exchange
He
earlier
he
today,
is.
but
He is. So, he is a Roger Waters loyalist. I will give him that. So and fine, everyone has an opinion, right? That's what
yep.
these shows are all about. No,
Sure.
no one opinion is right, no one opinion is wrong. It's just different. It's just variety, right? And that's all it is. So, ladies and gentlemen, down there in the comments below, please put your opinion. Does Pink Floyd or did Pink Floyd exist as a band without Roger Waters? Or the minute Roger Waters walked out that door in 1985, did Pink Floyd cease to exist? Right? I
And
know
if there's an example that we missed where yes, there is one individual in a band that one can point to and say, yes, this band could not be without that, let's have that discussion
as
in
well.
the comments below.
Yes, please put that in the comments below. Please give us an example. We're not experts
Oh, Lord, no.
on this topic or on topics of music. We're just giving you our heartfelt opinion, and that's all it is. Okay. So
Yep.
again, I want to thank Jim Bricker for joining me on this episode, this tangent, this rant that we went on. Um, you know, and we
It
will
was
be back.
fairly rantful. I'll give you that one, Armando. It was
Yes,
fairly
yes,
rantful.
yes. It was, and it was actually quite good. Actually, I kind of got some frustrations out during this episode,
I
but
hope you feel better. I'll send you my bill.
yes,
I'm not a cheap therapist, but
well, I'll pay you what I can. Um,
there you go.
You take kidneys, right? Anyways, that's payment. So again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in. And again, I want to thank Jim for joining me on this episode. We will be back with our Steely Dan top 15 tracks. That's coming up next week. We're going to be taping an episode on the 24th, and that is coming up. And there are more episodes coming up. I am also going to be doing a live album spotlight on Is There Anybody Out There? The Wall Live from 1980 and 1981. That's coming up. So for Jim Burker, I am Armando Venditti signing off. Again, before I forget, please Click like and subscribe and hit the notification bell to keep yourselves on top of any new content that I've got coming up. So for Mr. Jim Bricker, I am Armando Venditti signing off, and we'll see you soon with another video. Bye for now.